Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Ambassadors of Gaming classroom session. I'm going to be teaching you today about terminology because Adam here, he said, I need some extra lessons. I don't understand these terms. I'm an old man, so we're going to re-educate him. And hopefully you as well. So the terminology here is selected between people who don't know anything about video games and people who know most things about video games, to also the jargon that we use when you talk to people online and you have no idea what they're talking about. So we have some more complicated language mixed in with the intermediate to beginner language. So don't be upset if you know these things. Don't be the smart little kid and answering all the damn questions in the comments right away, okay?
So basically,
I have a lesson.
What he's saying,
shut up and listen.
What he's saying is we're going to go from What are video games? I like that pink Pikachu one. To my paladin is a level 72 white falcon warrior with strength stats of 59 power.
Pretty much. So Adam here will be playing his part as the intermediate man who's played games his whole life but doesn't really pay attention to the business side of things, which I assume is probably most of the people who will watch this video. So if you're unfamiliar with these terms, don't feel bad. Daryl spoke to me about these terms for like a year and a half before I understood what any of it meant. So, and I listened to podcasts and watched stuff, and I was like, I have no idea what these people are talking about. Don't worry, it takes time. But here, maybe we will fast track your progress, okay? So the first one is one of the most common ones, AAA. Adam, do you know what AAA is? Do you know what it means?
I'm gonna assume it's not a battery, but you know those big ticket games that are kind of like blockbuster movies.
Basically, yes. A game usually made with a high budget by a publisher and developer with a lot of money and talent. A high level of expectation is usually set for these types of games. It's also why we shit on them the most. So when
exactly what I said.
Yeah. So when a game comes out that's AAA and it's really bad, people get really mad because they feel like you wasted their time, their energy, and their money, as well as the time and energy of the developers and marketing. It just seems like a big waste of time overall.
Just remember, we're not talking about batteries.
This is one I hadn't heard before, but I hadn't heard this exact term, but I knew what it, like when I saw the definition, I was like, oh yeah, I've just never heard anybody call it that.
I mean, I feel like I could guess, but I also feel like I don't want to guess wrong.
It's fine. I'll tell you, because this was one of the first ones I was very confused by. Additional enemies during boss fights. Those little annoying shits.
I was so wrong.
Yeah. I was like,
I always called those minions.
Yeah, we just call them minions usually, but you know, this is probably also comes from
fodder.
Yeah, cannon fodder usually, something like that. So,
ads.
And yeah, they call them ads, right. Which is a bit confusing.
I don't like that.
Because then we have ADS. Do you know what ADS is? Are you familiar?
Nope.
ADS is aim down sights. It's what we refer to for FPS. So, for example, Halo did not have ADS. You couldn't aim down the sights. You could only hip fire, meaning you just had a general reticle on the screen in which you will shoot. Most games have ADS. It's what most people
I hate it when games don't have ADS.
Yeah, Halo was a big problem for me with that. Bots, fairly simple. I think everybody should understand what a bot is.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
They're robots.
Yeah,
basically.
They're AI-controlled characters in games, usually in multiplayer settings. Occasionally, they will be in local multiplayer as well, in case you are playing by yourself and it's supposed to be played with multiple characters, that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, I was right. Any term with bit in it. Do you know what an 8-bit is? A 16-bit, a 32-bit, a 64-bit. It's a bit confusing, no? Because even
you see, the bits. We got backstory on the bits.
What about the bits? Tell me about the bits if you know them.
Okay, so the bits are these squares that get colored in to show you the image.
Pretty much.
And as time went on and we got more bits, we got higher definition pictures. And, you know, eventually technology went on beyond that. But, you know, sound bits and everything is more than just graphics. But at one point, we had a whole t-shirt line we're going to design based off of 8-bit graphics.
This is true. Also, people who may be familiar with a little bit of purchasing more retro-related stuff, there's a website called 8-Bit. It's probably you'll see it most often now when referring to retro games. You won't see it very commonly referred to in modern games because it's not a resolution or a type of measurement we really use now.
Old screens were squares, and I think the new ones are what, circles?
More or less, they're different the way they utilize information. But yeah, it's basically about the computer architecture. So the chipset could only hold up to 8 bits, 16 bits, 32 bits, 64, and then so on and so forth. This one's fairly simple for you, I assume. 2.5D.
For me?
Yeah.
I don't know. 2.5 what? Dimension?
Well, we have 2D games and we have 3D games. So what would you intuitively think 2.5 is?
Wait, 2D and 3D? There's a halfway between 2D and 3D?
Yes. I don't know.
First person?
No, it's all right.
Platformer? No.
It's a game that has 3D graphics but takes place on a 2D plane. So those 2D games where you like the side scrollers that have 3D models for some reason, those games. There's not that many of them. Mighty Number 9.
That makes my eye twitch, and I don't know why.
Cause nobody likes making them because they're ugly as hell. So.
What do you mean? Abe's Odyssey is not ugly.
Okay, Abe's Odyssey is probably a better exception. But, like, yeah, so 2.5D is 3D graphics on a 2D plane. So a side-scroller, usually a side-scroller with 3D graphics. So, but 2.5D is what many people do.
Side-scroller.
Here's the hardest one. Would not have known 2.5D. Welcome, Seth. Alpha and beta releases. Do you know the difference between them and what they are?
Well, you see, the beta releases don't really talk or go out much, and the alpha releases make... No, I'm joking. Alpha's like, here's the first version of the game. It's really shitty and broken, and you're going to tell us what's wrong so we can fix it. And then beta's like, hey, we fixed some of that stuff. Hopefully it works now, does it? Okay, we're selling it.
Pretty much. Alpha refers to the earliest playable demo usually given or shown to the public. Usually at this point, the game is very early in development, but has its core functions being able to be shown. Beta is more refined, but usually doesn't reflect the final product. It's like, beta's like when you do the first coat of paint, And alpha's like when you do the primer. You put the primer on and you're like, yeah, I'm nowhere near finished, but here's what it looks like. It looks nothing like what it's going to look like. And beta's like, this looks okay, but it could be better.
And for people who are drawers, not painters, alpha is like when you sketch out all the shapes before you actually get to the detail of your image.
Yeah.
And then beta is like your image is done. You just have to go in and erase all the extra lines.
Yeah, and color it if you want to color it, pretty much. Like you're just adding like the nice details, making it look real pretty.
Get rid of all the extra lines, shade it a little bit better.
Pretty much. Buff/nerf. They're more or less antonyms, so I figured I would put them together. You should be familiar with buffs and nerfs.
So buff is when you're strong, and nerf makes guns. No, I'm joking. Buff is when they make something stronger, though, for real.
Yeah.
And nerf is when you make something weaker. Like when you have that multiplayer game, cough cough, not Fortnite, with really powerful shotguns, and they're like, well, we're gonna make them suck. That's nerfing them.
Pretty much. He's pretty much nail on the head. Nothing else to explain. Bullet sponge.
That's me when I play multiplayer games.
You wish. It's the opposite of that, unfortunately.
I know. No, bullet sponge is that boss. Like, it doesn't even actually mean bullets.
No, it doesn't always mean bullets.
It could be anything. It's that boss that just has the huge health bar and the really high defense, and they just sit there and take all of your attacks, all of your MP, all of your resources. It's just that boss that's put there to just drain you.
Pretty much.
Mentally and physically.
Also, every Soulsborne boss, basically. They just take 87 hits to fucking die, and it's horrible. That's what a bullet sponge is. Camping. This one should be fairly familiar for most people, but I figured I'd include it anyways because, like I said, we're going from simple to complex.
I know camping. I used to do this all the time.
Explain to the class.
So you gotta learn how to make fires and survive in the wild, and then when you play video games, you find like a hill to sit on with a sniper.
Yeah, pretty much. Someone who sits in an area and waits for players to pass by and kill them. It can also occur in single-player games, but people don't usually refer to it That way, it's primarily multiplayer. This one is fun because most people have no idea what this means. It doesn't sound like anything like what it is. It's called cheese or
I
cheesing.
hate cheese.
I am familiar with your resentment towards cheese. Well, anyways, are you familiar with this term?
Yeah, but I don't think I could explain it really. I mean, like, it's like not necessarily cheating, but like winning it in the cheapest way possible.
Accurate. A glitch or a cheap tactic to pass by a section or an enemy. Basically, it's the cheap way of doing it. You could do it. It's not the best way to do it. It's not the real way you're supposed to do it, but it works.
Like John Hammond making Jurassic Park. He totally cheesed that shit.
Totally. Cooldown, fairly simple. Cooldown is almost self-explanatory.
It's normally linked with the word timer.
Yeah. It refers to a time period where you wait for an ability to recharge. That's pretty much it.
Yes.
Every cooldown.
Not always an ability though. Sometimes it could be a weapon or.
Yeah. But it usually refers to a timer, yeah. That you're waiting for something to recharge. DLC. Also, if you don't play video games, I could understand why you'd be very confused by this, as it's more
I know what
modern
this
term.
means.
Tell me.
Devil-like celery.
Ah, yes, the famous DMC ripoff and parody. It's the one that you use so kids will watch.
Downloadable content.
Downloadable content. Extra content released for a game usually released after the main game. Not always, though. Sometimes it can be simple little things like extra costumes.
This is the one that our parents would never understand.
Yeah, this is the one they didn't understand. They're like, what do you mean you need more money to buy the game? You already bought the game. That's the game. Game's finished. And we're like, no, wait, there's more game. And they're like, no, that's bullshit. You just wait until the next game comes out. We're like, no, but this is so I don't have to wait for the next game. And they're like, but it's $5. Fuck you. I'll just wait 6 months until you have to buy you another $60 game.
And then they buy you the other $60 game, and you look at them, and you're like, I have no idea what's going on because you wouldn't buy me that $5 game.
Yeah, true. DRM. This one I don't expect you to know at all, but if you do, enlighten me. This is one of those business terms. I don't expect you to know it. I don't expect most people to know this one.
Devil's Romantic Manifesto.
It might as well be that. Digital rights management. It's software that is meant to prevent players from pirating games. Usually, however, it affects the performance of the game for legitimate buyers of the game. Always-on DRM requires the game to be connected to the internet. It's especially stupid in single-player games.
Oh, some of these are funny. I forget which game it was exactly, but there's a game out there where the pirated version will legit call the cops on you.
What?
And make you turn yourself in.
That's hilarious. I remember hearing about Far Cry. There was one of the Far Cries that did it, and people were bitching about it to the one of the designers or producers or whatever. And
they're like, "Don't pirate the game."
Yeah, well, they were like, "Oh, I can't see anything. My character model is like invisible or something like that, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, that only happens if you pirate the game." And we specifically left out code from the day one release, and then had to patch it so that way if you took the game pre-patch, you was basically unplayable. I was like, damn, that's kind of brutal, but it's better than this shit. So, Easter eggs.
Yeah. Ooh, Easter eggs. See, it's weird that we call them Easter eggs, but once we explain it, you'll understand why.
Yes. So go ahead. I know you know this one.
It has nothing to do with Easter. It has nothing to do with eggs. Like, you're not sitting there trying to find eggs in the game. It's not some, like, technical jargon either. It's literally just, it's based off an Easter egg hunt, you know?
Yeah.
You go out Easter morning and you search all over the place to find eggs filled with candy, little treats.
Yeah.
So when you're playing a game, there's all these little tiny references that you can notice in the game to, you know, other games and stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, Resident Evil 3, the remake, I believe had a movie poster at one point that was actually a reference to the original Dino Crisis poster.
Probably.
That is an Easter egg.
Yeah, something like that. It's usually something in the environment or something with, like, hidden NPCs or something.
They're even in movies.
Yeah, that's true. It's fairly common in movies. A lot of terminology you'll notice is also shared with movies. FPS, this one's fairly straightforward, so I'll just tell you if you're unaware. FPS is a first-person shooter. It's also confusing because FPS can mean frames per second. But if you're talking about a game, a type of game, it is an FPS, a first-person shooter. If you're talking about how a game plays, FPS is frames per second, which I didn't include here because of... Oh, no, I did include it here. No, I didn't. It's very boring, but it basically means, just like videos, frames per second are how many times a image moves per second. So the more frames, the more images pass, how basically every animation works. In case you haven't seen flipbook animation, the old style Disney, that type of stuff. So the higher FPS,
pretty much
the better.
Everything you see on TV is just thousands of pictures flashing before your eyes.
Pretty much. Even video, even live action videos the same way. Cameras use the same technology. It's just we just stitch photos together, and that's how you get everything. This video you're watching right now is just hundreds of photos just stuck together over and over again.
Yep.
But anyways, first-person shooters, you play as the main character through their perspective, and you shoot things. That's why it's called a shooter. I know.
I mean, I thought it meant farts per second.
Close, but no cigar. A glitch. Should be fairly simple for most people.
If you don't know what a glitch is, go watch The Matrix.
Go watch The Matrix. It's a fairly good movie.
See, a glitch is when something
something that makes the game behave in a way it was not intended to. Pretty much anything that happens that wasn't intended to happen is a glitch. That's why we refer to glitching and cheesing. Because if you cheese something, it's usually not intended.
And most glitches will piss you off, like the one that stopped Mike from playing Batman.
This is true. I've told the story a million times, but I won't tell it again here because I have a class to teach and I can't get distracted. It's time to talk about grinding, not the sexual kind, the video game kind.
Oh, I was thinking more about like the kind where you wear stuff down.
Well, that too. But it's more similar to that.
Yeah.
This is your favorite
your
one.
Own mentality. What do you mean it's my favorite one? Just because I play against games with grinding doesn't mean I like to grind.
Explain to the people, what is grinding?
Grinding is the most soul painstakingly process of... So you're playing a video game that has these things called levels. And levels basically indicate where you are at in strength. And different areas of the game can be on very different levels. When you're going from a low level to a high level, you normally just gotta run around in circles in that low level area until you get to a high enough level to actually survive in the high leveled area. And this whole time that you're doing this, you're not continuing forward in the game, you're not accomplishing anything in the game, you are simply just gaining experience and leveling up.
Yep. I kept my definition short, but repeating the same activity over and over again, usually for loot or experience. It's pretty much what grinding is. When you grind something in real life, you go like this, and you just go over and over again until eventually it gets to what you want it to be. And that's pretty much what it's like in video games. It's pretty much the same thing. That's why we refer to it that way. This one is... This is baby's first terminology for games. HP, health points. What are health points? Let me explain. It's how much damage you can take before you die. It's pretty much it. Unless you have
HP
regenerative
doesn't
health.
always mean health points.
What else can it mean?
Hit points.
Oh, yeah, hit points. Sorry. Health point or hit points, but it basically refers to how much damage you can take before you die.
It's the same thing.
Pretty much. HUD.
I just had to call you out.
HUD, this one.
I don't like this word.
I don't like this word either. It's dumb, but it's fucking important because when we criticize UI design, we have to talk about the HUD usually.
The HUD is basically like the dashboard stuff that's on your screen, so you know how much ammo you have, health, and all that other stuff. The map.
Yeah, it's all the information you see while you're playing the game that's not in the menus. Everything that pretty much annoys the shit out of you while you're trying to play the game. That's why I like the new HUDs, the disappearing HUDs. They're good. It only shows you information when you need it. And when you don't need it, it's gone. That's good. I can see the game now.
It's bullshit. You always need it.
KD. This one
I don't have the memory.
This one is for
KD?
multiplayer people.
Oh, I just got taught this the other day.
What?
Isn't it like kill death ratio?
Yeah, kill
death ratio. No, I didn't know this one.
Oh,
I was taught this one by this girl the other day.
Oh, okay, fair enough. KD, kill to death ratio. The higher the KD, the more kills than deaths the player has. It's a fraction. If you know how to do fractions, you know what KD is. Kills
I don't
divided
play
by
any
deaths.
games with KD. I don't play Call of Duty.
You used to play Transformers. That had KD. You had a good KD when
Did
you
it?
played Transformers, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right, I did.
Moving
I miss
forward, the
those
one
days.
everybody here associates with gaming. Lag. But what does it mean, really? Do people know? I know you.
Well, I mean, if they're watching us on Twitch, they should definitely know.
That's true. If you're watching us on Twitch, you should definitely be aware of what lag is. So I will explain it to you very easily. Usually it refers to a delay between the controller and the game, can be caused by hardware or by the internet, the bane of many gamers' existence. That's pretty much it. It's fairly simple.
Also, kind of like bad Chinese voiceovers.
Yeah, it just doesn't line up right. You know when they're like they like Godzilla movies. If you look at old Godzilla movies, they don't line up right. Or you look at an anime, like a bad anime.
Hey, how are you today?
Yeah, it's basically that, but in controller form. It's great. MP. This one's
Ooh,
also
MP can
fairly
refer
simple.
to a lot of different things. Magic points, mana points. There's some other M-word points that I've heard before.
It can also be confusing because for some reason some games will refer to MP magic points or ability. They'll call it SP, skill points.
Yes.
Which is very confusing
Yes.
because skill points are
Like-
usually what you use to unlock abilities.
MP
Depends on the
fluctuates more often than HP, but it's
Yeah.
all the same thing.
It's the bar
it's
underneath.
skills or magic.
It's the bar or number underneath your health. It's always that. Okay?
Yes.
And it's a metric used to determine how often you can utilize your best abilities and spells. Or spells.
Yes.
Depends on the game. Okay? Fairly straightforward. NPC. This one is really confusing to people who don't play video games or aren't familiar. So if you
I know this one.
If you need to know, Adam will now tell you. Explain.
It is nose-picking cat. No, NPC. Non-player character. All those annoying-ass characters that no one ever plays as because you can't, because, they're just computers.
Exactly. They're not players you control. They're usually friendly and used to populate the world. NPCs can also be referred to as enemy. NPCs, sometimes people refer to them as enemy characters, but usually we make the distinction that NPCs are friendly.
Yeah, no, like, if you're gonna watch, like, there's an anime about a video game hack, anytime they refer to an NPC, that'd be, like, a computer character in town.
Yeah.
Not one, yeah.
Like the shop characters, the
Yeah.
quest givers, those people are the NPCs usually. PvP and PvE.
PvP. You really need to know this one, because I remember when I didn't know this one.
Yeah, this one's fairly important, especially because if you talk to people and you're like, oh, this game looks cool. Like, if you're one of those people and you don't know anything about games and you just play, like, occasionally, you're like, oh, this game's pretty cool. Like, what's it about? And your friend's like, oh, yeah, it's PvP. It's pretty good. And you're like, oh, I don't know what that means, but all right.
Or some games let you choose which server you want to join.
Yeah.
And when I didn't know what PvP was, I was like, sure, whatever.
PvP is player versus player, in which players compete with other players. Usually, you beat the shit out of each other. That's usually what PvP
PvE
is.
is players versus enemy, where you're not fighting other players, but you're fighting computer-controlled monsters and such.
I also learned something new while I was researching this. It apparently also can refer to player versus environment.
PvP is player versus player, in which
I didn't
players
mean to play
compete
that. They can also refer to players dealing with the environment, because sometimes, when you're playing a platform game, sometimes...
Death Stranding.
Well, that's true. The environment is what kills you most of the time in Death Stranding. You just fall off a fucking cliff or die in a river. It's great.
Fall Guys.
Fall Guys, true.
It's PvP and PvE.
This one is going to sound really strange, but I promise it's very important. QTE, not as popular as it once was. Still important, though.
No idea what that is.
QTE is a quick time event. It's a style of gameplay in which you press a button on a timer to complete an action, usually done to showcase more complex animations that would be difficult for the player to complete or for the developers to design controls for. So basically all the Telltale games.
I feel so dumb.
It's okay. That's what I'm saying. Most people don't know what QTE means. That's why I put it in here. It's important.
Like, every game has QTE now. I don't even think people consider it as QTE anymore.
Most people have just
Your game
accepted it.
If it's not in the game, most people are going to tell you your game sucks.
Yeah, it's one of those like things where it's like the Blockbuster thing where we just kind of started accepting it.
Yeah, like they put it in games where it has no business being there, but like if you don't put it in the game, people are gonna say your game sucks. So
They're gonna be like, it didn't have the high octane action or whatever, you know?
They're like, when I ran from the boulder, I didn't have to mash a button.
Right. I would rather not mash the button and just run from it. But then again, I played Crash Bandicoot recently, where you run from boulders multiple times, and I'm like, this is fucking horrible. I hate this. So I'm not sure which I hate more. This one, I know you're
RNGesus.
RNGesus. I know it looks confusing, but I wrote it this way because that's how people say it. RNGesus refers to RNG. It's the same thing. That's why it's together.
RNGesus is normally when we're like hoping to get blessed.
Yes.
It's like praying to the video game RNG gods.
Yes.
Because
So-
RNG is random number generator, and it's normally used in random loot systems.
Pretty much. It's basically a slot machine. The game rolls an invisible wheel to determine what you may receive as loot, as well as its characteristics, including stats.
So basically, me and Mike go and we take on a Destiny raid together, just me and him. And I don't do anything the whole time. I put my controller down and I'm off in the back of the room scratching my butt. And meanwhile, Mike's busting his ass, sweating, killing all the enemies by himself, and he wins us the raid all by himself. Meanwhile, I was in the back playing with a monkey.
Yeah.
And so I come and I sit down. I'm like, oh, cool, we beat the raid, and the RNG thing comes into account, right? And Mike just gets a common-ass shotgun. Meanwhile, I get the legendary sniper rifle that makes enemies melt into puddles of acid.
Yeah. RNGesus is unkind to many and not a lot of fun. So you'll see many people have complaints about this. So, again, if you're unfamiliar, there you go. Now you know. Sandbox. This is an old term. This is one of the...
I hate this term.
Yeah, I hate this term too. It's stupid. I like the new term much better. I included it in the definition.
There's a new term?
It's the same thing. It means the same thing.
I didn't know there was a new term because they literally just call Sandbox mode in Jurassic World Evolution Sandbox mode.
Yeah, fair enough. A game that is extremely open and now usually refers to open world games.
Oh, that's not what I thought Sandbox meant.
Purpose is to
See, I
allow
play-
the player to have more freedom in how they wish to complete the game, as well as placing more content. Sandbox can also be a mode.
Yeah.
But typically
Yeah.
what they're saying is it's just this big fucking open world, go do what you want. Like,
Or I play a lot of... Mike doesn't play these games, but I play a lot of like amusement park builders and managers. And Sandbox mode for those just means like you have infinite money, everything's unlocked, build whatever you want, however you want.
it's supposed to reference a sandbox where you can build and create
Yeah.
and do pretty much whatever you want.
Yeah.
Fairly straightforward. XP.
That's the way you should have put the definition.
Super, super easy. This is like, again,
See-
baby's first definition. So
XP normally always means the same thing, but every once in a while a game will just put in some other bullshit terms, but you'll pick up on it.
yeah. It means experience points. It's basically the currency it uses to allow your characters or party to become stronger, and it can also sometimes apply to weapons and armor. Depends on the game.
Because I played a game once that called it KP.
Kill points or something?
Knowledge points.
Oh, that's so dumb. Yeah, it's
Well, it's because as your characters battled and survived the battles, they gained more knowledge and became wiser.
fair enough, I guess. Bloodborne has a similar style thing, but it's not. It's a bit different. Yeah.
I think the level was like also tied to their age, so...
Oh, okay, fair enough. XP, HP, and MP are all terms that may be interchangeable. So, more or less,
Yes.
they're in pretty much every game.
Just
one way or another.
learn the basics, and you'll get the gist of it when they fill it in with something else. Because they do it
Yeah.
every once in a while, just because like some video game developers are like, "Well, we had to be different."
Yeah, we had to do it differently. It's like, why? We already know. It's like when somebody's like, oh, here's some ice cream. You're like, all right, that's cool. And then they're like, here's some gelato. And you're like, oh, that's cool. But gelatino's like almost ice cream. Okay, it's a
But
basic.
it tastes so much better, and I don't know why.
It is better. Don't get me wrong. But it's not like it's not ice cream. It's not like
Here's a
whatever.
better-
Froyo. Froyo's different.
Here's a better comparison: a slushy and an icy.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing.
They're the
Like,
same thing, but like an icy is so different. The texture is just so much better.
I think the reason why we have to call it slushy is because Icy is like a company name. Like I think they trademarked it or something. That's why we can't
Yeah.
call them Icies. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically the same thing.
But there is a difference.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what it is, but you know what it is.
I think icy is more like compact ice, whereas slushy is usually more like liquidy. But I don't know. It's a bit weird. Anyways, we're moving on to AoE. Now we're getting into the really annoying terminology usually used by PC and MMO players.
Isn't AoE area of attack?
Close enough. Area of effect. The area in which an enemy or character attack will deal damage, usually with the shape of a cone, square, or circle.
I'm always the AoE guy. I like playing as the Hulk smash characters. The boom, circle, get the fuck away from me.
True, fair enough. The next one is asset flip. I don't expect you to know this one. Most people probably
Is that when you
won't know
flip
this
your
one.
assets?
Basically. What happens is a game comprised of pre-made parts are bought and then released as if the developer had made it themselves, but usually only purchased assets to then put them together to release a subpar game. So basically, they just buy a bunch of shit, put it together, and they're like, here you go, here's the game. And it's not really anything they put any effort into. Sometimes,
Also like some of the Sony games out there.
kind of, but more like, imagine like there's like a demo you could buy, and then you were just like,
Ooh,
I bought the demo, here's the demo, it's
Transformers
$20.
Rise of the Dark Spark.
Yeah. Rise of the Dark Spark is exactly an asset flip. They use the exact same assets from the previous game, and then just barely made some new ones.
They didn't even make their own assets for the new stuff they added in themselves. They literally just put new graphics over the old framework.
Yeah, they made a new asset with the same animations. Yeah.
Yep.
Which was terrible. Development hell. This one should be fairly straightforward for everyone, but just in case it isn't, it's here.
This is where some of my videos exist.
Basically, it's where all the franchises you know and love go to die. It's when a game is stuck in development for longer than expected or is delayed and reworked many times. So this is a game that is not canceled, but it's not releasing anytime soon. It's stuck in literal hell. It's stuck in purgatory. It's not dead. It's not alive. It's just there doing something. We don't know what, but it's there. This one is probably going to be a little bit confusing for you, but you should be fairly familiar with what these mean. Do you know the difference between first, second, and third party?
Yes and no.
Okay. Tell me what you know.
Like first party developer is, you know, it's the developer themselves is making the game. Second party developer would be like they're developing it, but a different person is making the game. And then third party developer, I don't know, is to involve 3 people somehow. Not people,
close.
but like organizations.
Close. First party refers to developers that are owned by a console maker. So the developers Sony, Nintendo, or Microsoft own at this point in time. Those are the only 3 console developers. Second party refers to a studio that is making a game specifically for one platform, but is not owned by the console maker. So you'll see this a lot on PlayStation. These are like when you get console exclusive games, basically.
Square Enix.
Yeah, a lot of Square Enix stuff. And then third party refers to any company that is releasing a game on a platform that really doesn't have any relationship with the console maker. They don't have a contract or anything. They're just releasing the game on their own. It's pretty straightforward. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is. I promise. That's how like most of this shit is. Game engine. I assume you don't know what this is, but you could probably figure out.
What do you mean? I don't know what this is.
I don't know.
I don't know what a game engine is.
Okay, well then tell me. How is a game engine work?
Yeah, because like we didn't spend like everyone in our high school went on and on about the Unreal Engine and how amazing it was.
Oh yeah, that is true. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Unreal
the game
Engine
engine is like your car engine. Your car engine is the thing that makes your car work. The game engine is the structure on which the game is built out of. It holds, you know, it's what it runs off of.
Basically, yes. It's basically the skeletal bone or the car engine. I actually used the car engine in my definition. It's similar to how a car engine works. A game needs a core, but it's with code. The game engine is designed to have certain features kind of baked into it so that it can be used more easily to make other games as well. Things like physics, graphical style, things like that. So it's usually things that you don't necessarily see exactly, but things that they create once so that they can just keep making games without having to redo it every time like they used to.
Yeah, there's no reason to redo Gravity every time you go to make a game where you can just go like, okay, we made Gravity. this will work for a majority of games.
Right.
Just build your game off of this one right here that we made.
And this is typically what creates the biggest amount of problems in games. This is like the hardest thing is designing.
Yeah,
this.
because like they'll pick their engine, but their engine can't necessarily handle everything they want to do.
Right. That's why I know this is gonna sound weird to you, but I don't know if you know it. Death Stranding actually runs on the same engine as Horizon Zero Dawn. Like it's the exact same. He was just like, yeah, I picked that engine because it does exactly what I needed to do. And that explains a lot when you think about it, when it comes to the core basics of those games and the movement. The movement in Horizon Zero Dawn and Death Stranding are very similar in how like GTA they feel, like that clunky sort of like weird movement you had. Yeah. This one I think you referred to recently when we were speaking. Gone Gold is a business
Gone
term.
Gold.
When a game has gone gold, do you know what it means?
Like everyone's fanboying hard over it, and so the video game companies go, "This thing is special." Stamp.
Close, but no. It's when the game has reached its quote-unquote final product, or in the more modern age, when the game is in a shape in which the publisher is ready to release the game to the public, manufacture discs, and get codes ready for release. Basically, it's when they're like, yeah, the game's basically done. It's time to sell it. It's the version of the game that you buy, basically.
Oh, okay.
That's why when you'll see developers, they'll hold up like a blank disc and it'll say like gold copy or something like that. And it's because that's the copy they submit to like Sony or whoever to copy to manufacture the game.
I always get super anxious when developers are like, yeah, so here's this game you guys have been waiting for, and it comes out later this year. And then I'm like, when?
Gone Gold is a very good... If a game has gone gold, it means there is no going back. It has already been turned in, and they are manufacturing the discs. It's going to be very difficult for them to delay it at that point.
Tell that to Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk didn't go gold until very long, and then, yes, it was terrible. So, to be fair, that was a business decision. That's why I put
Cyberpunk went gold, and then they're like, actually, let me just take this back.
More accurately, everybody was like, I want my money back. Not everybody, but a good portion of people were understandably upset. Moving on, Indie. I think you know what this one is.
Yeah, it's a guy that explores temples and has a whip and really likes his hat.
Not that guy.
And he makes games with people that aren't big publishers with smaller budgets and that don't really get noticed or get like promoted or anything. But you get them free if you're subscribed to your PlayStation or Xbox.
Yeah, sometimes that's true. They do go very frequently on Game Pass or Games with Gold and PlayStation Plus. But yeah, it's short for independent developer. Almost exclusively a developer that is made of either a small team or remains independent from a large publisher. This is going to sound really stupid, but Gearbox, up until recently, was considered an independent developer, even though they're gigantic. But nobody would call them an indie. When we say indie, we usually mean very small teams of people, under 100 usually. It's like small business.
Up until recently, I never really thought or viewed as Oddworld being an indie.
Yeah, but they are, yeah.
Like, now I kind of realize they are. But that's also because, like, when it first came out back, like, there weren't indies back then in the early 90s. Like, every company really was kind of an indie back then.
Yeah, well, it was more standard. Basically, what ended up happening with the game, like, very quickly, for those who are unaware, in the 90s, basically, you could just start up a studio and you would then get a deal with Nintendo or with Sony, or you would get funding through somebody else to publish your game, and then you would just make your game and you'd publish it. You'd release it. Then companies decided, it's actually a lot cheaper for us to just pay you millions of dollars to buy you and everything you own and all of the people who work for you. So then they just started buying people. But then it got really confusing because studios are only worthwhile if there's people who work there. So what happens is they would buy out the studios, and then everybody would leave, and then they would go start another studio. And then they would close down that studio because they would hire more people who don't have the same talents or vision. And they're like, hey, we know you made Crash Bandicoot, but can you make Deus Ex? And it's like, that's not at all what we do here. No.
They're like, hey, I know you said that you had an idea for making video games, and that you really felt like you could make the next big Final Fantasy. So we decided you guys aren't gonna do anything but make Call of Duty from now until
Until we
fires
shut
in
you
hell
down.
stop burning.
Yeah, until we inevitably close you. That's Activision, yeah. Hey, you know how you revitalized the 90s mascots of Vicarious Vision and Toys for Bob? That's great. But we're going to have to shut you down from there, and we're going to have to move you to making Call of Duty DLC, because that's what we need.
Hey, you guys know how you completely revived the Transformers franchise and had everyone, even people who weren't really Transformers fans, saying it was the best Transformers video game ever? Yeah, you're just gonna make Call of Duty DLC now.
You're going to make Call of Duty and Destiny DLC, an IP that we will sell and no longer have, so basically we make you entirely useless. Anyways, that's Activision for you. And that explains a bit about business from the gaming side, so you're welcome. This one is another one that is very obscure.
What is this? This looks like a disease.
It's two words that we put together. Metroid and Castlevania. Metroidvania. It's a type of game.
That looks like a STD.
It does kind of sound like an STD. A Metroidvania...
I have Metroidvania.
It sounds horrible, actually. It's a style of game design that pulls from Metroid and Castlevania. What that means is that it refers to a game that focuses on exploration as well as revisiting parts of a world with new abilities or equipment to progress or find secrets. That's what a Metroidvania is, for those who are unaware. I'm sure
I don't know. I remember the side-scrolling platform Castlevanias.
Yeah, that's... Symphony of the Night is the one usually people refer to with this one. That's the one where, like, I think you beat it, and then at the end of the game you have to, like, go back through the castle again, except it's upside down now or something.
Oh yeah, that bullshit.
Yeah.
I hated that.
Yeah, that's why Metroid's whole thing is that you go and you progress, and then you get new abilities and weapons, and then you can go back and you can go through different paths and get secrets and shit like that.
These games are the easiest games to get lost in, by the way.
They really are. They require a master level of design, and so they can be very confusing, and that's why it's very good to have a map when you play them. This one is another one I don't know if you are... I'm sure you know, generally speaking,
Isn't like
what it
that
is.
like game that like was it Shadow Rogue whatever?
I don't know.
That game where you like teleported and you had a knife and you know what I'm talking about. You played it.
Origami? I don't know.
No, maybe it's called Thief.
Oh, Thief. Yeah. Thief and Dishonored. Is that what you're thinking of? Dishonored?
No, I think I was just thinking of Thief.
Oh, I played Thief. That game sucks. I did not like it. It wasn't good. It was basically Dishonored, but worse. And Dishonored's not good to begin with. So, anyways, roguelike is no, it is
Assassin's Creed.
Assassin's Creed. No, roguelikes focus on procedurally generated
Stealing
levels.
your money.
Well, kind of.
Wait, procedurally generated levels?
Yes, a procedurally generated level. Don't worry, I'll explain. Meaning that the levels are stitched together pieces from pre-made parts that allow for a different sort of experience on each playthrough, usually resetting upon your death. The game focuses heavily on upgrading your abilities and your equipment upon death. So those games that you go and everything is random, and then you go through it, you grab a bunch of shit, and then when you eventually die, you start back at the beginning and you upgrade your character. It kind of has Metroidvania to it.
So the
but
new
it's
Resident
random.
Evil games. In a way.
No. Kind of, but no.
Oh. I've never played a game where you get better when you die.
That's because roguelikes are not games that you play. Just me. I've never recommended you play roguelike because you don't like to die, and that's the whole point of a roguelike. The most popular one right now that a lot of people know is Hades. That's the one most people know. Basically every time your goal is to progress further, and it's not that it's impossible to progress further, it's just very difficult. It's basically the precursor to Dark Souls games, except they're not incredibly fucking difficult for no reason.
I hate Dark Souls so much.
It's not that they're incredibly difficult, but they are designed so that each time you play it, you can go further because you are stronger. However,
Dark
it's not
Souls.
impossible for you to get through without upgrading. Dark Souls, however, is not designed that way. It is always going to be difficult and extremely hard for you. And that's the end of our class.
I think the closest I've ever gotten to roguelike games is Abe's Odyssey.
Maybe, but the big thing with roguelike is the procedural generation where it randomizes things.
I don't see how that's roguelike though. Doesn't sound very roguish to me.
I don't remember where the name exactly came from. I don't have the etymology of it, but that is more or less what it's like. So, yeah, if there are more terms you would like to know, I would be happy to go over more. There are obviously a
AFK.
large amount. AFK. Okay, AFK is definitely a more 90s term, and PC focused. But AFK is away from keyboard. It means you're not currently you're not at your controller, you're not at your keyboard, you are not currently playing the game. You're going to take a piss or get your soda or your water or a snack. You are not playing the game. And for some reason,
I just had to shout that one out real quick
you
because
did
I know a
not-
lot of people that don't know what it means.
that's true actually. It's because it's not it became very popular in like the early 2000s because of IM messaging.
Also, question:
But now not so much. Yes.
would Leroy Jenkins be considered a gameology term?
Possibly. It's more like a meme. I would say it's more like a meme.
Could use it in a verbish way though.
That's true.
Like when we played Destiny that time, and I shouted it out, and then it completely jumped into the thing when none of us were ready.
I believe it's been a while because I wasn't too familiar with the meme in the first place.
And like whenever someone does that, people literally use it as a verb. They're like, "Yeah," and fucking Tommy just had to fuck us all up by Leroy Jenkins getting this shit.
The slang meaning of Leroy Jenkins is the person that causes everything to go wrong for everyone else, usually in an extraordinary fashion.
Yep.
So yeah, not really surprising, but yeah, I guess it could be considered a term. But anyways, I'd be happy to do another one of these for people to kind of sink their teeth into if there's more that you would like to know. And
leave it down in the comments.
Yeah, of course. And then maybe if we get enough from there, I can just pull a second video and we can do that. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Anyways, class is over. Goodbye. Get out.
Ring, 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 ring.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.